you probably assume kissing is universal. That everywhere, in every culture, throughout all of human history, people have pressed their lips together to show love. It feels instinctive, natural, ancient. The kiss is the ultimate symbol of romance, the thing every love story builds toward. The gesture so basic to being human, that surely everyone, everywhere, has always done it, except they haven't. Here's the strange truth that should genuinely unsettle you. For a huge portion of human cultures, romantic kissing was completely unknown. Not rare, not private, simply absent. And when the people of these cultures first saw outsiders doing it, pressing their mouths together and lingering, their reaction wasn't envy or curiosity. It was disgust. They thought it was revolting. When one group in southern Africa first witnessed Europeans kissing, in the late 19th century, they were appalled. Their reaction, recorded at the time, was essentially, look at these people, eating each other's saliva and dirt. Another group in the Amazon, encountering it much later, found it equally gross. And an island people in the Pacific reportedly dismissed the whole thing as a rather silly, pointless little amusement. So kissing is not a human instinct. It's not hardwired into us, like hunger or fear. It might be something we invented. A few of us, in a few places, for reasons that turn out to be far stranger than you'd ever guess. And this is the story of how and why some humans started doing one of the oddest things our species has ever done, pressing our faces together and calling it love. Let's start with the fact that's hardest to swallow, because it reframes everything. Just how not universal is kissing. In 2015, a team of researchers decided to actually check, instead of just assuming. They looked at a sample of 168 cultures from around the world, and they searched for evidence of the romantic kiss. The mouth-to-mouth, lip-to-lip kind between lovers, not a kiss on a baby's cheek, not a friendly greeting, the romantic kind. And what they found stunned even them. Romantic kissing showed up in less than half of the cultures they studied. Fewer than half. In the majority of human societies sampled, there was simply no evidence of people kissing romantically at all. And it gets more interesting. The pattern wasn't random. Romantic kissing was most common in complex, stratified societies, the ones with social classes, hierarchies, elites. And it was least common, often completely absent, among hunter-gatherers and small-scale foraging societies. The kinds of societies, in other words, that most resemble how humans lived for the vast majority of our existence. Think about what that implies. Across most of human history, in the way of life, our species spent hundreds of thousands of years living. The romantic kiss may have been rare or entirely unknown. The thing we treat as the most natural expression of love on Earth appears to be, to a large degree, a cultural invention, something that caught on in certain kinds of societies and not others. The researchers had a sharp phrase for a blind spot here. They suggested we suffer from a kind of Western ethnocentrism, the assumption that because something feels pleasurable and natural to us, it must be a universal feature of all humanity. But it isn't. Most of the world, for most of time, did just fine without it. And here's something worth sitting with. The cultures that didn't kiss weren't cold, or loveless, or lacking in affection. Not even slightly. They simply expressed closeness in other ways. Ways that can seem just as strange to us as ours seem to them. Many cultures greeted loved ones not by pressing lips, but by pressing noses and inhaling. The famous nose rub of some Pacific and Arctic peoples isn't really about rubbing noses at all. It's about smell. You bring your face close and you breathe the other person in, taking in their scent as a gesture of intimacy and recognition. Some cultures sniff a loved one's cheek in greeting. Some inhale deeply at the neck. Ancient texts in certain traditions don't even have a separate word for kiss. They describe the act of affection literally as smelling. And honestly, when you step back, the sniff makes just as much sense as the kiss. Maybe more. Because if you stop and describe a kiss coldly, from the outside, with no romance attached, it is genuinely bizarre. Two people press the wettest, most germ-laden parts of their faces together, mash them around, and sometimes exchange saliva, breath, and bacteria on purpose, and call it the most beautiful thing two people can do. Put that way, the disgust of those other cultures starts to seem perfectly reasonable. We're the weird ones. We just happen to be weird in a way that feels, to us, like the most natural thing in the world. So now we have a genuine mystery on our hands. If kissing isn't a universal human instinct, where did it come from at all? Why did any of us start? And here's where it gets genuinely weird. Because the leading theory about the origin of the kiss begins not with romance, but with food. Let me paint you the picture. Imagine a world with no baby food, no blenders, no soft purees in little jars, no way to process a meal. Into something a toothless infant can swallow. A baby is ready to move beyond milk, but it cannot yet chew. Tough roots, dried meat, fibrous plants, these are impossible for a tiny mouth with no molars. So what does a mother do? She chews it for them. Across the animal kingdom, and throughout human history, mothers have practiced something called pre-mastication. The parent chews food until it's soft, and then passes it directly, mouth to mouth, into the child, It's called kiss feeding, and if you watch it happen, it looks almost exactly like a kiss. Lips pressed to lips, a moment of intimate, sustained contact, the transfer of something from one mouth to another. We see versions of this behavior in apes. We see it documented across countless human cultures. For an infant, this mouth-to-mouth contact wasn't just feeding. It was bound up with warmth, with safety, with the presence of the person who loved and protected them most in the entire world. And here's the theory. That association, mouth-to-mouth contact, equals love, comfort, and care may have gotten wired into us. At the deepest level, in infancy, the press of another's lips became, in our developing minds, one of the very first signals of being cared for. And later, the theory goes, that same gesture got carried into adult life, repurposed from the bond between parent and child into the bond between lovers. The romantic kiss may be, in essence, an echo of being fed as a baby, a tender ancient gesture of nourishment, transformed over time into a gesture of desire. And there's one small, almost eerie detail that supports this idea. When researchers watch people kiss, they notice something odd. The majority of people tilt their heads to the right as they lean in, not randomly, consistently to the right. And one proposed explanation reaches all the way back to infancy. Mothers, when cradling and nursing a baby, tend to hold the child in a way that has the baby turning its head a particular direction. Some scientists suspect that the rightward tilt we bring to a romantic kiss may be a faint behavioral echo of how we turned our heads, as infants toward the source of milk and comfort. If that's true, then every time you lean in to kiss someone, your body is performing a tiny, unconscious movement, first learned at your mother's breast. You are, in the most literal possible sense, doing something your body has done since the day you were born. I told you it was weird. Now, that's one theory, and it's a compelling one, but it's not the whole story, because there's a second layer here. And this one isn't about your childhood. It's about chemistry. And it suggests that every time you kiss someone, you are secretly running a sophisticated biological test without having any idea you're doing it. Here's the thing. When you kiss someone, you are pressed right up against the most chemically informative real estate on another human being. Their breath, their skin, their saliva, and human bodies are constantly broadcasting an enormous amount of hidden information through scent and taste. Information about health, about diet, about hormones, and, crucially, about genetic compatibility. There's a system in your body, deeply involved in your immune defenses, that helps your body recognize and fight off disease. And there's good evidence that humans, like many animals, can unconsciously detect cues about another person's version of this immune system through scent. Why would that matter for choosing a partner? Because, in general, having a partner whose immune genes are different from your own can produce children with stronger, more varied immune defenses, better equipped to fight off a wider range of diseases. So here's the startling possibility. When you bring your face close to someone and kiss them, some part of your unconscious brain is sampling them, reading their chemistry, assessing, beneath the level of thought, whether this is a person who, on a deep biological level, you're compatible with. It's why a kiss can feel inexplicably amazing with one person, and inexplicably wrong with another, even when everything on paper looks fine. You're not just kissing, you're testing. The kiss is a chemical interview, and your body is the interviewer, asking questions you never consciously hear. Think about that for a second. The most romantic gesture we have might be, at its root, a health inspection, a way of getting close enough to another human, to taste and smell whether their biology and yours could build a strong child together. There is nothing in the world less romantic than that sentence, and yet it might be exactly why the whole thing feels so powerful. But knowing what the kiss is for doesn't explain why it feels the way it does. And the answer to that turns out to be wired right into the architecture of your face and your brain. Start with your lips. They are, pound for pound, some of the most sensitive territory on your entire body. Human lips are unusual, even among primates, in that they're averted, turned outward, exposing all that delicate, nerve-rich tissue to the world. They are packed with an extraordinary density of nerve endings, so concentrated that the lightest brush sends a flood of information, racing to the brain. In fact, the region of your brain devoted to processing sensation from your lips is enormous, wildly out of proportion to their actual size. Your brain cares about your lips far more than it cares about, say, your back or your knees. So the moment two sets of lips meet, an avalanche of sensory signal hits the brain all at once, and then the chemistry takes over. When you kiss someone you're attracted to, your brain releases a cocktail of powerful neurochemicals. Dopamine, the molecule of craving and reward, the same system lit up by the most addictive things humans encounter, surges, producing that giddy, euphoric, want-more feeling. Oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, floods in, deepening feelings of attachment and trust. Serotonin shifts. And cortisol, the stress hormone, actually drops, leaving you calmer and closer. In a single kiss, your brain runs a chemical program designed to make you feel pleasure, connection, and the urge to do it again. This is the part that ties the whole strange story together. The dense nerves in your lips evolved long before romance, for tasting, for feeding, for sensing the world up close. The bonding chemistry of oxytocin evolved to glue mothers to infants and partners to each other. And the kiss, that weird invented gesture, plugs directly into all of this ancient hardware at once. It hijacks the wiring of feeding and the wiring of bonding and fires them together. That's why a kiss can feel so overwhelming, so much bigger than the small physical act it actually is. You're not just touching lips, you're pulling every lever your mammalian brain has for closeness, all at the same time. So we have two strange roots: the kiss as an echo of being fed, and the kiss as a hidden biological test. And here's the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. If kissing taps into something this deep, this biological, then how far back does it actually go? Is it purely a recent cultural invention, or is there something genuinely ancient underneath it? And the answer is, satisfyingly, both. Let's go looking. First, the animal evidence. Remember how I said kissing isn't a universal human instinct? That's true. But the capacity for kissing-like behavior may run deeper than humans entirely. Our closest living relatives, chimpanzees and especially bonobos, engage in mouth-to-mouth contact. Bonobos in particular are famous for it, using kissing-like behavior, sometimes quite enthusiastically, as a way of bonding, of reducing tension, of reaffirming social ties. So the raw physical building block, the use of mouth contact for connection rather than feeding, isn't unique to us. It's present in our evolutionary cousins. The hardware, you might say, was there in our shared ancestry. What humans did was take that hardware and build culture on top of it. Charles Darwin himself noticed this. Back in the 1800s, in his work on the expression of emotions, he observed that many cultures didn't kiss in the romantic sense at all, but instead expressed affection through other gestures, rubbing noses, sniffing, patting. He suspected these might be older, more fundamental forms of the same underlying impulse, the desire to bring our faces close to those we love, and to take them in. Now for the written evidence. And this is genuinely remarkable. For a long time, the earliest clear references to romantic kissing were thought to come from ancient texts in South Asia, dating back around 3,500 years. But more recent research, published in 2023, pushed that date back by 1,000 years into ancient Mesopotamia, the so-called cradle of civilization in what is now Iraq and Syria. On clay tablets written in cuneiform script around 4,500 years ago, we find clear references to kissing as a part of romantic and sexual intimacy. And some of these ancient lines are startlingly, beautifully human. One tablet, thousands of years old, contains a line of love poetry, where a woman describes her own anticipation, her upper lip growing moist, her lower lip trembling, as she declares that she will embrace him, she will kiss him. 4,000 years ago, a human being felt that exact flutter of desire you have felt, and reached for words to capture it. And those words survived long enough to reach you right now. The kiss they describe is the same kiss. The longing is the same longing. Across 4 millennia, nothing essential has changed. The researchers who studied these tablets made a fascinating point. The evidence suggests kissing wasn't invented in one place and spread outward from a single origin. Instead, it appears in multiple ancient cultures, independently, across different times and places, which fits everything else we've seen. Kissing isn't one invention that traveled the world. It's something humans, in certain kinds of societies, kept arriving at on their own. A gesture our biology made possible, and our cultures, some of them, chose to embrace. But here's the dark little twist in the tale. The part that's almost poetic. As kissing spread, it brought something else along with it. Disease. When you press your mouth to another's, you exchange not just affection but saliva, and everything living in it. Researchers have pointed out that the rise of kissing may have helped spread certain infections through ancient populations, including the virus responsible for cold sores, oral herpes, which is transmitted exactly this way. There are even hints from the study of ancient microbes that mouth-to-mouth contact between humans and Neanderthals tens of thousands of years ago may have helped swap the bacteria living in their mouths. The intimacy and the infection traveled together, then as now. Every kiss was, and is, a small act of biological trust, an opening of the body's borders to another person, for better and for worse. So, let's pull this strange story together. We started by shattering the myth that kissing is universal. It isn't. Most human societies, for most of human history, didn't romantically kiss at all, and many found the very idea repulsive. Then we found 2 weird roots beneath the gesture. The echo of being fed as a helpless infant, mouth to mouth, by someone who loved us. And the hidden chemical test, the unconscious sampling of another person's biology for deep compatibility. We saw the capacity for it sitting in our ape cousins, and we read the oldest recorded kisses, etched in clay. 4,500 years ago by people whose longing was identical to ours. And what does all of it add up to? Something I find genuinely moving. Underneath all the weirdness, the kiss is not a pure instinct, and it's not a pure invention. It's both at once. It's a piece of biology, the ancient mammalian use of the mouth for bonding and feeding and sensing, taken up by culture and transformed into a language. A language that not all humans speak, but that those who do speak fluently, with no words at all. We took a gesture that began with nourishment, layered it with chemistry and meaning and memory, and turned it into one of the most concentrated expressions of human connection that exists. A kiss says, in a single, silent moment, I trust you enough to open my body's border to you. I want to be this close. I am, in the most literal sense, taking you in. That's not nothing. That might be one of the most human things we've ever done, with our strange, repurposed, food-sharing, chemical-sensing mouths. So here's my last question for you. If kissing isn't universal, if more than half the human cultures who ever lived got along just fine without it, then every kiss you've ever given or received wasn't an inevitability written into your genes. It was something humans chose and built and passed down, a gesture that could just as easily never have existed at all. So, does knowing that a kiss is partly an accident of food and chemistry and culture make it feel any less magical? Or does it make that small, strange, deliberate pressing together of two people feel even more precious, precisely because we didn't have to invent it? And we did anyway? Let me know what you think in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you soon.